It's really good to meet you guys, and I'm just trying to get back out on the circuit, raise the profile of my game, but also, I mean, I published stuff years back. I got 10 books in print, more from the RPG side on the role playing,
Right.
and that's where this came from. The whole setting, the whole background is based on the role playing game, and yeah, so it's just really cool to be out there. Really good to be talking about this kind of stuff again, and getting the old fans and an old fan base still out there, and they're being
Yes.
revived at the moment. But I want to get a lot of new gamers into this, and it's just good to be out there talking about it. It's
Well,
really good.
you know what? Let's dive in, Chris. Welcome to the show. Tell us
Thank
about
you.
Heroes of Thargos. I know it's a card game based on your Cursed Empire RPG, but tell us about the game itself, about the card game, and how does it play through? How do you is what kind of game is it?
Okay, so it's a deck construction game, and basically you start out with the what we call the kind of core set, which has two starter decks or the equivalent of two starter decks in there. You can build, and basically you build a party of heroes, the heroes of Thargos, and you have to carry out a bunch of missions to win victory
Okay.
with opposing players who also are setting out on the same missions, and they're trying to undermine you winning those missions. Playing various cards are going to counter certain actions.
Okay.
There are four types of cards in the game. So you have the character cards, which are they're all red bordered cards. You can see this very well.
Yep.
But you have the red bordered cards. They're all the character cards from the party. Then you have what we call action cards. So these are all green. So they're kind of dynamic in play cards
Okay.
for the game
Okay.
itself. And then you have the mission cards you're going for with the kind of gold borders. So they're like the reward cards, so mission cards, part of the game as well. And finally, you have what we call lasting cards, which are the blue cards. And they are there to kind of boost your character stats. They're minions, various objects, magic objects, and they kind of boost the character stats as you go on. So, deck construction game, straight out of the box, ready to play, and build multiple deck combinations.
Right.
Two-player starting game, but we also have a solo game mode as well, and also a story game mode.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, the story game mode is almost like a mini RPG in the card game, where you kind of get down to street level adventuring, almost like dungeon crawl. So it's a lot more kind of zooming into a location.
Okay.
Whereas the core set itself starts out with a kind of a grand tour of the settings. It really, the idea is to bring people into the setting, the world of Thargos, hence the Heroes of Thargos,
Yeah.
and to kind of get a flavor for the setting. That's really where that comes from.
So the story mission is that co-op? Can you play that co-op, or is that still a versus mode, or is that a solo mode,
You,
or
all
all of the
three.
above?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
Exactly.
versatile.
So solo mode, you're obviously playing against some kind of AI, some solo game mechanic, where you have a solo party against you, opposing the missions you're going for. That is an opposition. You're really fighting against a solo AI. In the player versus player, there is a player versus player mode. You are competing to win missions over and above the opposing party. The first party to reach number of victory points wins the game. And one of the kind of interesting game mechanics is the fact that each character has a power cost or value. It means they're more beefy, they're more powerful to actually win missions. But when you put your party together, the stronger the party, the harder it is to win the game. Now that may seem counterintuitive,
Interesting.
so because basically the more powerful the players you have, the more you're aiming for higher renown, higher glory. So you need more higher power missions to win the game. It means in terms of game mechanic and deck build, you can actually go for a really weak party with a much easier success, let's say, level, but harder to win the missions, and anywhere in between. So some weak characters, some strong. You can mix and match. So it really is down to how you want to build your deck.
Right.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the Cursed Empire itself. What were the origins from that? Obviously you have, it's a universe or world that you've created. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Okay, well, just from the just the backdrop here, I'm a massive ancient Greek history fan, massive Greek mythology fan. I think you'll recognize this lovely lady here.
Oh yes, one of my favorites.
I'm really into that kind of background, that kind of setting. And Cursed Empire has been inspired by heroic adventures, ancient Greek city-states warring with each other, but then uniting when faced with a more powerful common opponent. And that's very much what Cursed Empire is kind of based on. You have a fantasy game setting. It's pretty gritty. It's very dark and pretty brutal. It's just that's the original second edition core book. And
Oh,
in that setting, you have put up again a little bit more. See that?
that's
I
awesome.
saw
That
I
is
saw
very
having
nice.
looked at it there. So that's a 500-page doorstop. But that was the core book, and basically in there it lays out the setting. You have 80 cities and villages and towns to go and adventure in. You have over 100 orders and factions, so guilds, factions, cults, religious factions, druid gatherings, assassin guilds, a whole bunch of different orders you can join and organizations, and they all have pretty complex geopolitics, pretty complex interaction. Some are aligned with some, fighting the same enemy, some detest each other, even though they're in the same camp. It allows some really, really rich kind of background to the game. And as a player, you can get as much involved as that you want, or not at all. It can be just a backdrop to your game. That's more in the RPG. But in the card game, you also have factions. There are optional rules to actually play with the factions. You can build a party around a certain faction. You can, if you play the optional game, some of the blue cards you add to the characters, you can't add them if they're not from the same faction. So it limits some of the gameplay.
Okay.
And that in the deck construction concept, that makes things a bit richer from that point of view, a bit more complex. But the Cursed Empire setting comes from a passion of gaming, a passion of ancient history, and I'm a huge fan of the old Ray Harryhausen films, all the old fantasy movies, Jason the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of grew up with that. And when I started running a home game on the RPG, my friend said to me, "Chris, you got to get this published. You really got to get this game out there. It's just a totally unique setting. Get it out there." And it's very different from other stuff that's out there. I can go into more detail, but you may have some more questions.
Well, I understand that the card game can actually integrate with the RPG. How do you do that? How have you designed the card game to also work alongside your RPG?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. So basically, let's imagine your regular RPG gaming group. They have their regular campaign. Let's say they meet up every Friday night. A bunch of friends get together, get some beers, get some pizzas in, and have their regular RPG game. But they think, well, this Friday coming up, I haven't had time as the MT, Master of Tales, which is GM in the kind of Cursed Empire setting, to prepare stuff. Let's just get the card game out. Let's do a side quest. So the card game then becomes a side quest.
Okay.
And basically what we're doing is, as we release new RPG books, there's going to be a third edition, another Kickstarter coming out after the card game.
Okay.
There's going to be a third edition of the new book, the new RPG, and we're going to be releasing new supplements and new decks, new cards, additional expansion packs of the card game, which will tie in with the theme of the releases, the supplements, the source books, scenarios. So let's say, for example, I'm releasing a supplement on a certain cult or faction in a certain region.
Right.
There'll be 15, 20 new cards come out as well,
Awesome.
which then means you can then play a side quest in the same environment to emphasize a certain point. Let's say the players beat the MT, because the MT then becomes player 2. They play an opposing party of NPCs.
Okay.
Yeah. You then play as players with your cards against the GM or the MT. If you win the game, you get rewards. So, for example, if you win the game that evening, that Friday night, the next session, the MT will release some extra secrets to the characters, some extra information, maybe another object they find. So you actually reward the kind of card game mechanic and success with additional stuff for the RPG. Then it goes one step further. In story mode, what happens then, you then actually, you build... I'll explain. I mean, in terms of the base card game, you have a track system where you play against other players in an opposing track on a certain mission card.
Okay.
In the story mode, you have a bunch of missions that can be A to B to C. You have to play through those scenarios in a certain order, those missions, to succeed and play through a bunch of encounters. Some other missions, if you succeed in, they unlock additional hidden encounter cards or mission cards. So it can be linear. It can be let's say multi-order. You can play certain scenarios in different orders. What it does mean, though, as a GM, you take the core set, you say, I'm going to build a scenario around this region, this area, using expansion 2, and I'm going to limit some of the cards. Some of the creature cards you get in the action cards, I'm not going to allow for those creature cards to be in that scenario because they just wouldn't be there in the RPG setting.
Okay.
So basically, as a GM, you can just construct the decks, you can put in certain missions, and basically the players can play out those scenarios as side quests, almost like if you're playing, we talked about video games earlier on. I mean, playing video games, you have the side quest. You're playing Witcher, you go for a side quest in a cave or something. it's almost these mini side quests that the card game then becomes.
Right. So I was going to ask about the construction itself. Would players be required to have their own deck ready to go, or is that something the MT would pre-construct and say, here, you're going to use these decks for this side quest?
Both, because basically you would have the MT would have their core mission cards, which they keep to themselves because they're building the scenario around the mission cards.
Okay.
So they would be kept hidden until they get revealed as the game gets played through. And then the players would come along either with their own deck they've built, because you can have certain cards they can play from the deck they have, or the GM could just have, the MT could just have the cards. So really, it's whatever's practical.
Okay.
Very cool. I want to know what some of your favorite cards are in your game. Obviously, you're very passionate about this game. I want to know which of these cards have some special meaning to you.
Okay, that's a good question. There's quite a few, but there's some real fun ones here. If I pull out some of the ones let's pull out some of these ones I really like. There's quite a few that what I'm going to go for here.
How many cards are in the deck to start with?
The core deck is 136 cards.
Okay.
You have the Manticore attack. I don't know if you can see this well.
Oh.
See some reflection off it.
Nice.
Not easy with the reflection and the angle, but this card. So basically, one of the rules of the game, as I said earlier on, you can win the game through victory points, winning the missions, or if your opponent is drawn out, they lose.
Okay.
So if they're drawn out, they have no more cards to draw, they lose. So that's the other way. So you can actually play a defensive game and then wear the opponent down. It's another gameplay, another game style. But this card, all players immediately shuffle their discard piles into their decks. That's like throwing a massive grenade in the middle of the game, because let's say I'm a player who's getting the other player to burn their deck. I'm trying to wear them down so they get drawn out. They have that card. They can suddenly reshuffle everything back in. The whole game's back on again in one go.
It's like chugging a health potion for them.
Exactly. That's your ultimate Control Alt Delete and just start the whole thing again. Reboot the whole damn game.
That is awesome.
That's a fun one. You have another one here. Normally, when you play the game, as I said earlier on, you stack up your character cards.
Yes.
And you can also play the lasting cards, which you then stack up behind them to kind of make a stack of stats.
Okay.
As you stack them up, you have 3 stats. So there's might, mind, and mysticism are the 3 stats in the game, and they're the same from the RPG. But you can also play other cards from your hand as modifiers to kind of boost for a one-off action or mission attempt to boost the character. So normally what happens, the attacking character, they have to lay face down some of their booster cards, and then the defending character says, okay, you've got 3 cards down, I'm going to lay 2 down and try and counter your attack and defend with my 2 cards face down. But this card, the Spider Darkened Slayer, who are really, really nasty characters in the Cursed Empire game, they're religious zealots, fanatics. This player can actually play a card after the defenders put their cards down. So let's say I put down 3 cards on the attacker. The other opposing player puts down 2 cards. I think, we flip the cards over. Wow, they won. I can play another card out of my hand and counter and actually even flip the result. So that's a pretty unique.
Yeah.
That's a unique one there as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff you can. There's a lot of stuff that just wipes out people, injures everybody. There's a lot of cards.
There's a lot of stuff going on in a card game like this. Like, when you're developing this, how did you track all this? How did you balance all of these kind of things in creating a card game like this, which is akin to like Magic the Gathering? How difficult was that to actually get all these cards to work with each other, and where one card doesn't break the game entirely?
Well, the thing is, when you look at the build of different cards, the stats, how you build the stats on different cards, how you build the power, the strength of cards, it's actually quite a simple mechanism we've designed. So let's say, for example, that She-Darken, that pretty nasty character, she has a power of 9. That's her kind of strength.
Right.
So she actually also costs you 9 victory points to win the game. She has her 3 stats. If you total them up, you total that up. They equal 9 points, basically, the 3 stats. So that's how all the different stats, you total them up, they have a certain impact on the stat at the top.
Okay.
So there's a direct mechanic between that. In terms of balancing things out, it's a lot of play testing. It's you need to build the stat blocks. You need to check things out. Some cards are real levelers, I must admit that Manticore attack is a leveler, but any player can have one of those in their deck. The other thing is we put some little padlock symbols on some of the cards, and the padlocks you can only have one in your deck construction.
Okay.
So anybody can have that card, but there's only one, limited to one per deck construction. Others, it's as many as you want.
Now, was that padlock designed through playtesting? Did you realize, oh, that's too game breaking if you got more than one? Let's limit that card to one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that wasn't there at the beginning. It kind of came through realizing how powerful some cards could be.
They are, exactly. And we had to limit some of that, but we still wanted the massive impact, in-game impact, because the interesting thing is, as that Manticore, I said before, take that example again, it's a real leveler at the right moment, towards the end of a game when someone's about to go bust.
Yeah.
But if you play as a modifier, the top right-hand corner, it's worth +3. So let's say I'm desperate to win a mission card. I know I'm probably 3 points short. I wanted to keep this card. I think, no, I now need to play it as a modifier. You burn it, but it may be the time to burn it for 3 points. Because all what we call played as a modifier in the top right-hand corner range from 1 to 3. So any card you lay face down is either a 1 or a 2 or a 3. So it's interesting. When you look at a player, they could be bluffing. They could have 4 cards down. That could only be 4 points. It could be 12.
Ah, yes.
So there's also an element of bluff as well. You can bluff as well, which is pretty cool as well.
That's great.
All right, so I want to know a little bit about your campaign. Which stretch goal is going to include the helmets and shield in it that you've got sitting around there? Tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about your stretch goals and and what people can expect to find in your campaign.
Okay, so really the starter product or starter game is the 136 small box here. That's really just a kind of prototype.
Okay.
That has the core set to build 2 complete decks, or for 2 players at least, or for 1 player to have a lot of different deck construction combinations. If 2 players want to get one box each. Yeah. And there's a special deal for the Kickstarter where you get 2 for slightly less than obviously 1 times 2.
Of course.
But then you have other things we add to that. So for example, it's going to be an option to have a mini folding battle mat. So this could be something where literally you get a little battle mat which unfolds. It's going to be a bigger box. You lay that down to then lay out your cards with your mission tracks, discard piles, victory piles, all that stuff. That will fold into a little box, which obviously means a bigger box, bigger shipping costs, and so on. But we'll look at how that works out. I'm wondering, it may end up being, this is not finalized yet. This one I'm looking at the moment. This may end up being unlocked as part of the stretch goals, exactly that, or maybe an add-on.
Okay.
And then we get into the realm of this, which is another level.
The neoprene mat. Very nice.
Bit of a beast here, there's different versions of this for the artwork. I don't even see how well you can see that, but
Yep. Looks great.
So that's the big fully stitched mat. That will probably be an add-on because obviously then it changes the dynamics to the box size, shipping costs, and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking at how we rationalize that. And there's a bunch of other stuff which in the stretch goals I won't say too much.
Okay.
But I did hint on the story mode, so I won't say too much more than that at this stage. That'll be to kind of look at going forwards. I also have one of the things I was looking at as well, and you can see there's a nice little candle here next to the helmet. My niece makes candles as one of her side activities. I've got black and red candles here, so they're the Cursed Empire official candles that last. Another way of determining who's won the game is who has the highest victory points when this thing runs out.
Oh.
It's about an average gaming time for 3 players.
Interesting. Okay.
And my other niece, who's a trained pâtissière, is making a massive Cursed Empire Heroes of Thargos cake, which I'm afraid will not be a stretch goal. I'll be eating that in the family. But there's a bunch of other stuff. There's other stuff going to be coming. We're still working on some of those extra stretch goals, some of those extra rewards, but it should be pretty exciting. And you never know how far I can go. Also, the idea is to do options for players to actually or backers to design cards with us.
Nice.
And I'm hoping to have like a whole design day with some people to actually go through designing a whole expansion pack together.
Okay.
There's some pretty fun stuff. There's some get people involved, really involved directly in the game, getting involved in influence in making some of the cards with us, and come up with some custom stuff and getting some real, some creative activity going as well.
It's probably good that you're not including the cake as a stretch goal because I don't think it would ship well.
No,
Uh,
we've been discussing. My niece lives in Vienna, in Austria, and she's probably going to take some really cool photos of that for sure. But then she'll ship it and chop it up. It's going to be a massive, a foot and a half long or something, big piece of cake and stuff, so with cards on top and stuff.
it sounds
You'll see
delicious,
more
to be
about
honest
that.
with you.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm almost more excited about the cake now.
Well, we aim to please everybody, you see. So
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, we have a new segment that we've just started, which is our lightning round to get to know you a little bit better. You okay with answering a few quick lightning round questions for us?
yep,
All right. So these are all board game night related. So just first thing that comes to mind. All right. Last game that you played.
pandemic.
Pandemic.
Awesome.
Probably thematic for the time that we're in.
Yeah.
Favorite modern board game.
Modern board game. Wow.
It can be Pandemic if you want.
It's not really so. No. What would it be? Modern board game, as in recent, or as a modern contemporary in terms of
As in more recent, like last 10 years type thing.
Gloomhaven. Well, Gloomhaven's more recent for me. I only bought it recently.
There you go.
So
Okay.
Gloomhaven.
Perfect. Your favorite classic game.
So from more than 10 years ago.
From the days of
Or
yore.
from-
You know what?
From growing up.
I enjoy game as zombies.
Oh, nice. I love that game.
I love zombies. All right. In legacy games, destroy your components or preserve them.
Destroy them.
Destroy them.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Here's what I think I might know your answer. Deck builder or deck construction game.
Deck construction.
Thought that might be where you were going with that. The last game that you've purchased.
Last time I purchased was Mermaid, the game you guys did an interview on.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
That's fantastic game. Dice or cards?
Ha.
It's got to be cards. Come on.
It's got to be cards, but hey, wait a minute. That's we can use dice in the story mode, but cards.
Okay.
Cards. All right. And then finally, campaign or legacy?
Legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
Yeah, I love legacy games. And I'm with you on destroying the components, because that's the fun of a legacy game. You get to you have a reason to actually destroy
It's the
things.
permanency of your decisions. Your decisions have consequences, and that's you destroy because you can't go back.
Well,
Not
that's
taping that card back
Absolutely.
together.
Yeah, it's a bit off topic, but I mean, that's what I love about legacy games is by the time you're done playing the game, you have your own distinct, unique version of that game, right?
Absolutely.
That you can now play as the regular game, but it's unique to you and your
Absolutely.
gaming group. I love that. All right, so before we let you go, Chris, it's been a pleasure having you on, but give us the elevator pitch for Heroes of Thargos. Why should we buy this game?
Because it's going to be a lot of fun designing those scenarios through story mode. It's been a lot of fun traveling around Thargos, getting to know a totally different setting, getting familiar with a totally different environment, and hopefully it'll lead people into a totally different game going forwards. There's a lot of stuff. There's a third Kickstarter as well after the RPG as well. And a lot of these things are interchangeable and it involves miniatures.
Yeah, you're building a whole world around this, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on Kicking Tables, learning more about your card game. I'm excited. And the Kickstarter is coming out in mid-May, so everybody
That's correct.
there's going to be a link down below for that. So go sign up to the Kickstarter now, and you'll get notified when it goes live. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank you
good
very
luck
much.
on your campaign.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Thanks a lot.
You're very
Stay in
welcome.
touch.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Okay, so actually, when you asked him which card was the most important in the deck, he should have actually mentioned that it was the Alvin Warrior because it is me, his wife. So that was a big no-no. Okay, thanks, guys.